I've got a confession to make.
I need to get this off my chest. As a business owner, we all make mistakes.
I've got to confess.
Hey guys, it's Charlie from Confessions of a Business Owner here, and we are bringing you, and when I say we, me and Kim Barrett are bringing you a very important episode today. We are talking about niching, why niching is so important, and why you need to pick your niche in the modern world of business. So how you doing, Kim?
I am doing super well. Thank you, Mr. Charlie, sir, and yourself?
Yeah, things are really good. I'm actually just coming back from a nice long bike ride thinking about niching. I've been getting a few questions from people and really reflecting on why niching is so important. So I'm ready to kind of like just brain dump everything I've been thinking about into this episode.
Can't wait. I should note, though, for our probably close to 1 billion, I'm guessing, USA listeners, we understand that you call it niche, but bear with our Aussie accents. It's niche, okay?
It's funny and it's like so true. I don't mind. Either way is fine. We know what we're talking about, niche or niche. And I love this saying. There's a reason why niche rhymes with rich. So I almost want to swap the Aussie to be that, just so we can have that saying come through in everything. Because I feel like that's really true.
100%. And it's funny that it's probably one of the things I would guess that most business owners take the most lightly. And I think that most people that have been in the coaching space or anything like that, it's the thing that you most often have to reiterate with people over and over again. And we kind of get probably bored sometimes talking about how much the niche is important, but it's one of the things that makes the biggest impact on a business, hands down.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think this is one of those things that gets taken way too lightly, as you said. A lot of businesses would do a lot better if they paid attention to their niche and understanding who their customer is and how they serve them. I really, really think that. So I want to tell a quick story. I've kind of been thinking about this because I wanted to use a real example. This is something that happened to understanding like why niching is so important and why people need to pick their niche for their business. So when I started online way back, I had a digital agency that used to do everything for everyone. So we used to do websites, we used to do apps, we used to do PPC, we used to do some SEO stuff, even some email stuff at one point. So it's like we were literally had our fingers in every pie of what you could do on the internet. Now, we'll preface this by saying, like, when I first started my agency, you kind of could do that because, like, things weren't complicated. And I'll give you an example. Like, to do SEO was simply you'd have a white page and then you'd write the keyword in white so you can't see it and then just write it as many times as you could. So it's like, if you were trying to rank for Plumber Melbourne, you just have this white page with Plumber Melbourne written 4,000 times on it and then buy some dirty backlinks from some site. And that's how it was done. So it was easy. These days, like SEO is I couldn't even comprehend how it actually happens or what people do. And the same's happened in a lot of these spaces. But what's really, really interesting in this story is like I was going along in business and I was really struggling. Like this was in the early days and I found it very, very hard to bring clients in. I found it very, very hard to service clients. And then I found it very, very hard to bring in the right amount of talents and different talents because we were so spread across so many things. And I hired a mentor. I went to a mentor and I hired them and I explained my situation and what I was going through. And like, it's quite funny because this person was very experienced and very coyly. And he's like, what are you good at? And I was like, well, I think I'm best at the PPC bit. He's like, just do PPC. The rest of it, stop. No more at all. You just do PPC. And like, he looked at me a little bit like frank as well. Like it was so coy and certain. And I was like, well, I'm just going to roll with it. I'm just going to do it. Like this guy seems pretty certain. We'll go with it. And that was the birth of PPC Empire. So we decided, look, we're not going to do anything else. We're just going to do PPC, which was Google AdWords and Facebook ads. And we're just going to specialize in that sector. And the craziest shit started to happen after we did that. It's like all of a sudden my struggling business, just kind of flatlining, going up and down, we started to actually get some traction. People were really like interested in working with someone who just did PPC. It was like we had an area of expertise. And that was the first lesson I got about niching is like when you just do one thing, you get expert status. Like if that's all your company does, that's where you're naturally going to be better than a lot of other companies. And it was really appealing to a lot of businesses to be working with someone who just did that thing really, really well. The second thing happened though is like we started to grow, which is awesome. Like the company was growing and I was excited. And what became awesome is how easy it was to bring on team, because I was only looking for one type of person and they could cross train each other. So instead of like, trying to have one SEO person and one website person and one AdWords person, like that's 3 separate people. Like I just had 3 people that were doing like AdWords and Facebook. So they were interchangeable. They could work on each other's work. They were upskilling as a team. If someone was away, it was much, much easier to fill gaps. Like I almost like double won like accidentally on the back of this COI statement. And then what I realized on the back of that is like how much easier this is going to be to scale. And it was easier to scale. Like PPC Empire went on to scale to about 15 staff and it was a much easier experience. Like I actually couldn't have done it if I was still trying to do all these pies and be all these things. So my first niching experience was kind of by accident, as I said, this coy little comment, but it like actually was the thing that really helped my agency actually succeed. I'm not sure we would have made it if I kept trying to be all things to all people.
That's so interesting. Such a there's so many good points in there. Do you mind if I kind of ask a couple questions on that as well?
Of course.
So, and at the beginning, I'm going to make this assumption it was based around my own decisions, but because I've got a story to tell as well, very similar. But do you think at the beginning, the reason why you did so many things is because it was the easiest way to get money? Because people are like, oh, I need SEO and a website and this. And you're like, well, I do all those things. Of course, please give me all the monies. And it's almost like it's almost like you're scared that if you don't get all the money, you're not going to get money from anywhere else.
Yeah, look, I'll be real. It was like I was operating from a fear scarce mindset. It was like I would take on anything that I could get my hands on because like we needed the cash. Like it was actually coming from that. And then I was scared I couldn't get all one type of client. And I think there was a lot of fear and scarcity and like there's not enough and all those things at that point that was operating through me. And, from my perception, and this is something I see so commonly today, we think that being able to serve everyone means that everyone, will work with us, but it's kind of the opposite. There's this reverse thing that comes through.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I think that one of the reasons why a lot of people, they probably listen to this and some of them still won't take action because they go, well, if I stop serving this portion, I'm going to lose this income. But like you said, it makes it way easier for people to refer, to identify you as an expert when you just have that one group of people that you serve, that one specific niche. It makes everything else easier. And to be honest, like we were talking about this before we started recording, it allows you to build some pretty powerful relationships with other people in the same industry if you do this, because then you go, well, actually, all these people come to me. They want something. I don't do it because I only serve my centimeter wide and kilometer deep niche. So I have to send them somewhere. May as well send them to someone who is going to be helpful, that may refer back to me, that may reward me for sending it through. And if you do that, like it just literally can, like you go from, as you say, from like kind of struggling or flatlining to as soon as people know that you specialize in one area, like it just skyrockets because it allows everything else to kind of take care of itself.
Absolutely. And there's all these knock-ins and you just referenced something so important there. And I want to go back into that. It's like, because that's exactly what happened is like all of a sudden, if we got a lead for a website, let's say, well, I wasn't doing websites anymore. I would give that to someone who did websites. And then that's how really strong relationships can, birth, because who doesn't like a guy that gives you work? Like it's just how it comes through.
You love the person that sends you all the leads that you haven't had to do any work for, and it's the best type because you've already been pumped up by someone else, and it comes through nice and easy. So yeah, that's perfect. And I've got a story to share as well, which is very similar.
Go for it.
On 2 parts. So obviously, I have a agency as well, Facebook advertising that was our specialty, and at the start it was so funny. I was sitting there, I was actually selling my house. And we were selling our house and there was guys there and they're like, oh, like, signing the paperwork to see our real estate agency. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm in social media. I didn't really know what I did. I'm in social media. They're like, oh, we've been looking for a social media person. Like, what do you do in social media? I'm like, well, I pretty much cover a broad range of topics. I cover many things. like didn't really know what to say, right? When they asked that, like, what do you do in that? I'm like, yeah, so we like do posting, we do ads, we boost stuff out. Like, oh wow, awesome, cool. So they signed up. Whatever they ended up getting in commission for selling our house, I pretty much got it back in work for social media.
Nice.
But I started doing so many different things. They're like, oh, how come this post hasn't, like, how come you didn't do this post? Or that post that you put on our page, why is it like, say this? And then it's like, oh, you said you're also going to do ads. Like, what, like, how come you targeted like men in like around the area? And like, why did you target 30 to 40 and all this different stuff? And I was like, oh, I'm in over my head a little bit here. I was like, I've taken on so many different things within the realm of social media. Then they're like, oh, we noticed you did Facebook, but how come you're not doing like our Instagram, our Twitter, our LinkedIn? Like, have you heard of this like Google thing as well? Like, can you do some stuff on like this Google social media? And I was like, oh God, this is terrible. And I was like literally trying to be so many things to all people. And I was just like, nah, this is not going to succeed. So I was like, okay, cool. I managed to like refine a little bit. I was like, if I'm talking to anyone about social media, I just do Facebook and I do the paid side of Facebook. But people still came to me wanting these other things, right? So I was at events talking and I was like, talk to people. Yeah, I do Facebook stuff. Like, oh yeah, cool. Like, what about websites? And I was like, in my head, I was like, well, I can probably hire someone on like Upwork to build a website. And I'll just charge these guys like a reasonable amount of money, and I'll like should be just like profit.
Should be right. All good stories start with that.
Money in the bank, right? And you're just like, okay, cool. And then I did this project, and I paid this guy, and we did this work, and it was coming through. And at the end, it was like getting towards the date of delivery, and we're looking at it, I'm like, none of this stuff is done. None of this is updated. None of this is what we actually requested. And then the person who did it all, they'd already paid like 3/4 of the money of the project, because it was like per milestone. The last part shouldn't have done that, because the last part was most important. Then it got to like towards the delivery, and the client's like, we haven't done all this stuff, and then the guy just disappeared. Like the guy that was working on the project just literally like ghosted, because it was online, right? It's like, I'm not going to fly to Bangladesh to try and find this guy. It's
we'll
like
do that
disappeared.
Later. We'll get back to that. Don't worry,
Exactly.
Your days are numbered.
We'll find him. But he's disappeared, and the client's like, well, you can't finish my project, blah, blah, blah. I want a refund, all this sort of stuff. And I ended up giving them the money back. So literally to spend like 2 months working on this project cost me like whatever it was, $2 or $3 grand. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm absolutely not doing this ever again. I was like, anyone want a website? I was like, no. Because then as well, like a month later, one of the earlier websites I'd sold, like, oh, can you update like our thing? Can you like give us a new email address? Can you do all this stuff? And I was like, well, it's meant to be so easy. It's just meant to be money come into my bank account. Someone else built it. Simples. No, that's not how it had happened. Did not work that way. So literally after like, sobbing tears into my pillow for a couple of weeks, I was like, cool, I'm just gonna do Facebook ads now. But even then, right, like when I started doing that, we've just been chatting about this as well, and we'll probably talk about it more in another episode. That's still not a niche. Like it's probably, I'll give myself like halfway there, right? It's still not refined enough if you just do that. Because then as well, it's like, cool, do you do it for, like you said, let's just say like your example of the PPC. Do you do it for plumbers, bricklayers? Do you do it for e-commerce stores? Do you do it for coaches, consultants? Do you do it for people that want to run webinars? Do you do it for people outside of your country? Do you just do inside your country? Like there's so many other refinements that actually makes serving a niche so specific. But again, we get scared. It's like, well, I do Facebook ads, but I better say for everyone, because otherwise, like if someone comes to me and they want e-commerce, if I say I don't do it, there's $5 grand that I miss out on. However, if I do that and now we have a referral partner and I handball that over to them and they do it, number one, I don't have the headache of a client that wants a lot of attention from me. And it's not saying that they're headache and that they're bad in the way they communicate, but for me, if I'm not getting the best result ever, it's like builds up stress and pressure on me, because I treat their business like my business. So cool. Someone else wants that responsibility, I give that to them. They love me. They treat me super well because I send them clients and happy days. Like I'm happier. The client's happier because they have a specialist in e-commerce. The e-commerce person's happy because they're like, man, this Kim guy just sends me money. Like that's great. Like let's keep him happy. And that makes my life so much easier.
But there's a really interesting point in there, is like, and this is something, and there's a few things I want to loop back to, but this first, in that example about the idea of, let's say you're really good at service businesses, which you are, and someone comes along who is an e-commerce client, is $5,000 a month, let's say, up for grabs. Let's call it 10. And you look at that and the appeal, and we see this payday. We see the idea of someone paying us. But I think what really gets overlooked is the opportunity cost, because when you take that on, is like you actually remove a spot for the right client. And it's like, in my experience, like taking on the wrong client, especially when you know better, it's like when you know better, it hurts even more. But we've got to recognize like how much we can actually take on and deliver well for. Otherwise, we just go into this same loop of like headache and stress. And I honestly feel like a lot of businesses out there who are feeling stressed or pressure on a lot of things is because they take on too many of the wrong client. They put a lot of stress and pressure on their team by taking on everyone at any point. Now,
100%.
I've got another question I want to loop in there. When, it sounds like we're doing similar things in the fact we were taking on anything, and I love all good stories start with, well, I can hire someone on Upwork to do that, but we'll come back to that. Was your attitude similar to mine? Did you have a feed the machine, get the money mentality?
Yeah, 100%. Because as well, it was like, I would say, like we're still in the early stages. So it's like startup, if you will. We're like, well, I could say no to this, but with that $2,000, $3,000, I could do this, this, and this. Well, okay, great. Like, of course, I'm good. Like, oh, it makes logical sense. Like, money for time. I better do that. Versus going, well, like you said, and it's funny now, every time that it happens, like, if I say no to something, then I generally find that the right thing that I did want comes up somewhere else. Like, it'll come back, may not be the next day, maybe like a week or a month later, but like the replacement or the equivalent of that generally will be around the corner. And again, if I took the other one, I wouldn't be able to work with that one. So it's like, it's always like this, like balancing.
No, it's interesting because I don't want to get woo-woo, and all the rest from there, but it's like, generally the universe gives me a sign. And I mean that in like, if I say no to a client that isn't right, one will pop up that is the right. And if I say yes to a client that I know isn't right, it's like the universe will make sure it's really painful so I don't do that again.
Yes, 110%.
How interesting. All right, so I want to make sure we cover this for people there, because there's types of niching, right? There's a lot of different types. I've seen some really interesting ones. I've written a few out here, and what I want to do is I want to read them out, and feel free to chime in on any of these, but these are the ones that I think are the cornerstones. So the obvious one for I think a lot of people is like, it's who you do it for. It's who your business serves. So you might say, we serve, in your case, just service businesses, or we serve just product businesses, or we serve just males or just females, right? So the who, I think, is a really obvious one. And then the other one I see really, really common is what we do. So the example we've looked at from here is like, you could be doing all types of internet marketing, or you could just be doing Facebook ads. And this applies in a lot of things. And I've seen this done in online businesses and offline businesses. In the plumbing world, which is where I used to work once upon a time, like there's guys, that just do roofing, and there's guys that just do drain work, and it's all for the same reason. So it brings it all through. It's not circumstantial. I've seen this in product businesses as well. But then there's a couple of interesting ones, how you do it. So you might, and I love this example in restaurants, is like you might be a steakhouse, but how you prepare your steak is your niche. Like that's actually what you do. It's special preparation to how you do things, or how you make your product, or how you do your service. So Kim does Facebook ads, but he uses a special formula and framework, and that's his method. So it's the how we do it that becomes interesting. The next one I want to bring in is where you do it. So maybe you just work with Australian businesses. Maybe you just work with people in the US. Maybe you work with people in, I don't know, I'm going to go with Bali. I like Bali at the moment. Bali's very flavoursome. Maybe you just work with people in Bali. And then the last one I threw in here is that what you don't do, I think, is just as important from here. And feel free to, I'm going to lay an opinion down. This is an opinion, right? But feel free to rebuttal this or put your own twerk. And I'll repeat these really quickly. What you do, who you do it for, how you do it, where you do it, and what you don't do, right? Where a niche comes from is the layering of all of them.
The beautiful Venn diagram, the hedgehog concept of the sweet spot in the middle.
Yeah, it's actually how deep you dive into each of these that carves out your space. It's not necessarily one particular one that makes or break it. And maybe you don't use one at all. Like it can be a mix. But the path to niching lays within doing, and we'll get to that next bit on how, but somewhere within that equation is with how you find your niche.
And I think and again, like to reiterate for people, and this is always the example, or one of the examples that is used when people talk about niching. But if you go, well, who gets paid more, a GP or a specialist? Right? If I go to a, what do they call, like the ear, nose, and throat doctor, or I go to a general practitioner, a GP, I'm going to pay more at the ear, nose, and throat because they literally deal only with the head. Right? That's their specialty. And they charge you like 10 times more than anyone else. So, when you have those specialties, it does allow you to have increased prices, but as well as because you have a special set of skills, right? Liam Neeson style.
Yeah,
right?
The medical world's a great example of this. And because I think we can relate to this on both sides. Is like, I don't know about you, but I've certainly been stung to go to a specialist. Went to a heart specialist and lucky he was there because when I saw the bill, I was like, but point being is that, from both sides of it, let's look at it as like a GP has general knowledge and we also look at it and go, okay, well, they're generally available. It's not that special. There's plenty of them out there, but specialists make so much more money. They just have a specialized area of knowledge and they're well regarded. And then even the way they do their business is very different to how a GP operates. And it's a great one. But then from the consumer side of things, like for us, like if you've got a heart problem, it's like you want to see a heart specialist. You don't want to see a general practitioner.
Yeah, if you want to get fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say in Australia where we are, you do actually have to see a GP who then refers you to a specialist because he realizes he is not set up for this. Okay, so I think we're in agreement on a lot of these points here, and I think there's a lot of things that kind of lay into this. But then I want to go into the next week about how to niche then. Like, how do you actually approach this topic? Because, it's all good to cover, why it's important, which I think we can both agree. It's also good to cover the layering, but I want to know the Kim Barrett approach. Like, how do you pick your niche? Is there anything you look for particularly or approach you take? That's the end of part 1 of this episode. Make sure you tune in to the next episode to pick up part 2 and how to pick your niche.